Welcome, college baseball fans. I am Monty. With me is Nick. Micah is currently doing some of his stadium ballpark content at first he was at Duke, now he's at North Carolina. And Jake is banned from the show indefinitely for being Jake. So just me and Nick tonight. Nick, how you doing?
Good, man. Busy weekend. I know you and I were both at the Wake Duke series. I was lucky enough to go to all three thanks to the weather issues. It kind of worked out in my favor to go to all three, but staying busy, trying to do content. Got all my stats out last night for all the ACC fans. So, man, dude, college baseball is really rolling right now. So I'm excited. And my pack won. My basketball pack.
Yeah, wasn't it nice to be able to Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't it nice that the ACC updated their stats in time for you to
Yeah, so it was nice, and then apparently there were some state fans found out that they didn't update the state players. So when I put down Alec Makarevich leading the ACC in RBIs, which he was with 28, it was really 32. So I knew that it was up to date with everything else because they had the standings correct. No other fan base came out and said, "Oh, this is actually this or this is actually that for Georgia Tech or UNC or something like that." Both times it was NC State. So my apologies. I will double check from now on to make sure that they are correct and maybe go on the team website just to make sure. But because I did notice that that's weird. I'm pretty sure Makarevich had more, but I mean, it says updated March 10th on Sunday. So that's what I figured.
Yeah, it's weird they didn't include one team.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I had a great weekend. I was down there in Winston-Salem for 2 of the 3 games. I ended up not going to the Sunday game, which, travel-wise was the right call. It was a 4 o'clock start and was a really sloppy game that went late. We'll talk about that series a lot probably on the show because it was the big highlighter of the headliner of the weekend. But first, we're going to talk about a little fun thing that our ACC group is doing. We are doing a ACC Fantasy Baseball League, and we wanted to do a live draft, but ultimately we kind of just did an auto draft. And let's introduce that for a little bit because these are going to be weekly articles that we're doing. And here are the rules. It's a head-to-head schedule. So, for example, Nick is going to face Micah in the first week, rivalry match. It's going to take place over the 10 ACC weekends. That's 10 Fantasy League matchups. No midweeks are counting, so all this craziness that's happening tonight is not applicable. Only ACC weekend series count. There's not going to be any need to change your roster unless a player is injured or a starting pitcher moves to a midweek role. I have a number of players for each team that can be brought up if something like that happens. But for the most part, nobody has to worry about setting lineups or anything like that. It's just these are your 15 guys. We ride. So like I said, 15-man rosters, 8 fielders, 1 designated hitter, 3 starting pitchers, 3 relief pitchers. That makes 15. All right. The championship will take place during the ACC tournament in Charlotte between the top 2 fantasy teams. And there will be weekly articles around Wednesday or Thursday to review each week's fantasy results. So this is Nick's first time really seeing the rules laid out. Nick, what are your thoughts?
I love it. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to force us to kind of keep up with all the other, players that maybe we don't have an eye on all the time. So I think it's a good exercise really for everyone to talk about these players that are on our team. So I really like this. Mike and I try to do something like this with during football season, picking a quarterback, like basically doing like NFL fantasy, but for college football in the ACC. So we tried doing that, but it was just so much to keep track of. But this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited for this.
Yeah. So what's interesting, if you guys are watching our show every week, you see that I'm doing slides with all the top performers, and basically I'm doing an article with all that information as well. So I'm basically recording all these stats, pulling all these stats anyway from the 3 ACC games each team plays every weekend. So all I have to do then is calculate the points. So it is a lot to keep up with, but it's going to be a fun thing once a week. And then I'll update everybody with what's on it. We might have a little brief recap in our show about what's going on, maybe some trash talking between us. But here, let's take a look at the teams here. Oh, there's the scoring points. I forgot to bring that up. So it's a points league with 1 point for basically if you get on base, 1 point if you steal a base, 1 point if you drive in a run, and then it's 2 points for double, 3 points for a triple, 4 points for a home run. On the pitching side, you're going to lose 1/4 of a point for a walk, a whole point for an earned run, and then IP, innings pitched, K, saves, all 1, and then if you get the win, that's 3. All right.
I actually do have one question.
Yes.
Can we make trades?
Yes.
Cool.
I will allow that if you guys want to make trades.
Sweet.
So here are the teams. This is a screenshot from our spreadsheet, so it's a little aggressive, but it was a lot of interesting players that we were able to get in there. Obviously, when I was doing the auto drafting for Nick, I know he's the cinnamon roll with Nick Kurtz. So I that's why your first round pick was Nick Kurtz. I tried to make sure there were about 8 players that I felt were first round worthy, and then it was just a matter of figuring out who would want each player the most. Obviously, Cole would love to have Cam Canarella, so I tried to make that happen. Noah's obsessed with Drew Burress. And you'll notice that we only have 17. We have 8 teams here, and there's one team that doesn't have a name. We may have somebody joining the ACC team in the next couple of days that will take over that team. Again, they don't really have to do any managing of the team other than me going to you, if you're trying to do trades. But if your player gets injured or something like that, I'll go with you with an option of players. But let's talk to Nick about his team. It's highlighted up there on the screen. That's Nick's team. He's got, for those listening on the podcast, he's got Alex Stone at catcher, Nick Kurtz at first base, Austin Hawk at second base, Alec Makarovich of NC State at third base, UVA's Griff O'Farrell at shortstop, Jake Reinish of Wake Forest in the outfield, Eli Serrano III in the outfield, Chris Canizaro of Virginia Tech in the outfield, and then his DH is Lucas Costello. His starting rotation consists of Massey, Highfill of NC State, and Wyatt Parliament at Virginia Tech. And then he's got Jacob Duden, Bennett Flynn, and Lucas Malstead in the bullpen. Nick, what are your thoughts? I was very pleased with your comment last night. I woke up to that this morning and was glad that somebody was excited about it.
Oh, yeah. That was after finishing the stats late last night and looking at our DMs and seeing this, I was really happy with my team. Love Kurtz. I know that he's struggling a little bit. I don't think pitchers are really pitching to him, but I think once ACC play is really going, I think he'll start to light it up. Love AMAC. He's leading. I think he's second in the nation right now in RBIs. So love that. Love having an NC State guy. Reinish. Love him. I picked him to be my outbreak player of the year for College Baseball Central. Serrano. Love him. I picked him for something in our
yeah.
I don't remember.
Maybe most underrated?
Maybe that's what it was. Most underrated. Eli Serrano, love him. He interacts with me a little bit on Twitter with my NC State page that I run, so love it. Lucas Costello, I think is a sleeper for me, so I love that. We interviewed him, so if you haven't heard that, check it out. Massey, Highfield, I mean, these are all guys that I just like, either have a connection to or, I think are very, very good. I love my team. I think it's kind of underperforming a little bit, but I also think I have one of the better catchers too in the ACC with Alex Stone. So I love mine. That's awesome.
Yeah. For reference, Nick Kurtz was your number 1 pick. Griff O'Farrell was your number 2 pick. Now, those, based on how the season's going, they're both kind of struggling a little bit, but that's not going to last. Right. I think both guys are good. I mean, O'Farrell looks like he's already gotten going with the series against Miami, and Kurtz, I think, is going to get going now that Seaver King has gotten going and is protecting him a little bit more. Yeah. But on the other side, I gave you Makarovich in the 4th round, and that guy's putting up first round numbers. So it kind of balances out a little bit there. And then your number 3 pick was Michael Massey. So those are your top 4. If I give you your top 5, we'll just make it a nice round number there. It was Sam Highfill at number 5. Yeah. The pitching is a little bit light after you get through the first 5 or 6 guys. So Sam Highfill, based on how he's done this season, I think that's a decent pick there. So, really, really like Nick's team once I put them all together. It's going to be interesting to see how everything works out. So, basically, he'll face Micah the first week this weekend. Micah, as you can see, is right next to Nick. He's got the Luke Stevenson, Logan Bravo, Blake Sear, Adam Tellier, Kifo, Seaver King, Casey Sauke, Alden Mathis, and Brandon Anderson as his hitters. His pitchers are Sebastian Gongora, Folger Boaz, Carson Liggett, Aiden Teal, Nick Robert, and Owen Proch. So he's got a good team as well. To be interested to see you two go together head to head for rivalry week. Real quick before we move on, we'll talk about my team. Now, I had trouble because, guys, I was doing the drafting here. So I had to make sure I didn't just stash all the players I liked on my team. So there was a lot of tough decisions for me when it got to my turn because I wanted all the players that I love. I wanted Pennington. I wanted O'Farrell. I wanted Aiden Teal, but I made sure I spread around all the players that I could as best I could. I still ended up with a fair amount of UVA guys, but my first round pick ended up being Vance Honeycutt. I basically couldn't. Everyone else who had picked had already kind of picked who they wanted. I gave Jake an option of who he wanted in the first round, and he opted for Chase Burns. Grayson. I knew Grayson would be happy with Daniel Cuvée. So Cole had Canarella, Nick had Kurtz, Micah had Seaver King, and Noah had who has he got there? Drew Burris, excuse me. So Honeycutt or Josh Hartle was for me, and I ended up going with Honeycutt. So Tibbs was my number 2 pick. James Tibbs, he hit a home run tonight. He's having a monster season for Florida State. And then after that, I've got Macon Winslow as my catcher. I know he's playing a lot of left field and DHing for Duke, but the catching situation's tough because there's a lot of catchers that are splitting time too much. Like for Florida State, you've got Holbrook and Jackson West splitting time pretty evenly. So I got Macon Winslow at catcher, Henry Ford at first, Henry Godbout at second, Ben Miller at third, Jack Penny at shortstop, Vance Honeycutt in the outfield, James Tibb in the outfield, Devin Obie in the outfield, Anthony Stefan is my DH. My pitching staff is Jamie Arnold, Cullen McKay, Aiden Finiteri of Georgia Tech, and then my bullpen is going to be Charlie Bielenson of Duke, Carson Dorsey of Florida State, and Gabriel Nard of Duke. So I'm pretty happy with my team, and I think I did a good job making sure all these teams were fairly balanced across the board. So, yeah, and Noah says, elite draft. Can't believe we went 5 hours. So, thanks, Noah. But anyway, we'll move on here to the next part of our show here, which we're going to start recapping. We're going to kind of gloss over these 4 non-conference matchups as most of them took care of business. Georgia Tech swept Youngstown State all the games for that were run rules, either in the 7th or 8th inning. Pretty routine. Nick, you got any quick thoughts on Georgia Tech?
I think it's good for them to get like maybe some pitching pat down a little bit because we know that they struggle with that, but we know that Georgia Tech can hit. They're one of the better hitting teams in the conference. So they needed a huge sweep like this going into conference play for next week. I think that builds a lot of momentum. They've got NC State next week. So I feel like that's going to be a wild, wild series considering both teams are struggling with the bullpen and both teams can hit the hell out of the ball. So I think it's a big momentum push for Georgia Tech going into this week. And I think they're currently up right now on Marist. Let me see real quick.
No,
Mercer.
Virginia Tech's playing Marist. Yeah.
That's right. So they're up 8-2 in the bottom of the 8th against Mercer. So a lot of dominating wins for Georgia Tech to take on NC State this weekend.
Yep, love to see it. So Georgia Tech, Drew Burris hit his 10th home run. Parker Brocious 10 for 15. Monster series for those guys. 10 RBIs for Matthew Ellis. Gotta love it. Pitching looked pretty good. They were playing a winless Youngstown State team, but they took care of business heading into ACC play for them next week. Moving along. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's Georgia Tech, NC State. That'll be a big storyline once we get to the preview section. Thanks for reminding me that. I would have forgotten, but luckily you would not have. So one of the teams that did not necessarily take care of business this weekend was Louisville. They were riding a pretty long win streak coming into this. They took the first 2 games pretty easily. Third game, they dropped to Northwestern. Still, I think they're going to be okay. I'm still not quite sure about them. They're still spending a lot of time figuring out the lineup. There's a lot of players going in and out. Gavin Keelan has all of a sudden started hitting homers, which is good news. But Nick, any quick thoughts on Louisville Cardinals ahead of their hosting Virginia Tech to start ACC play next week?
Not a bad start, considering where they were when they started the season. They've really bounced back. But we're going to get to know this Louisville team and what they really are quickly, because I think Virginia Tech is the biggest sleeper in this conference right now. So there's a lot of high hopes for Louisville at the moment to get back into the national conversation, but they're going to have a big test. I think they did okay against a Northwestern team. That's not typically really good, but we'll see. I think they're starting to figure it out a little bit.
Yeah, the important thing is they won the series, but you would have expected a sweep.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So, moving along, Florida State remains undefeated after a 3-game sweep of New Orleans. They are currently playing Florida right now. Last I checked, they were up 7-5, but to make sure my Wi-Fi is working properly, I cut off the game. So we'll see how that's going after I get off here, but they are currently leading Florida. Nick,
10-5.
10-5. Okay, they are up 10-5, so they added on some runs since I have cut it off. Their pitching remains pretty elite. Andrew Armstrong started over the weekend. He also started tonight, which is rather impressive. He only threw 32 pitches on Saturday, but still. 6 guys in the top performers. The offense is clicking. Everybody's looking good. Nick, thoughts on Florida State? Are they for real?
I think they're for real. Considering we're keeping track of their midweek against the number 8 team in the country, and they're winning by 5 runs in the top of the 7th. I'm just shocked that they're not ranked. I know they haven't played anybody, but with an RPI of 9, it's kind of weird how they are not ranked. Kind of reminds me of their football season a little bit.
Yeah, to be clear, they are ranked in our rankings at 21.
They are ranked in our rankings. Yes.
We're talking about D1 baseball rankings do not have them ranked, and D1's taking a lot of heat for it this week. We had them ranked last week at 24. We have them ranked this week at 21. So
I personally had them at 18. So they are big movers for me. I think what's important to take away from the performers in this series, James Tibbs, Cam Smith, and Jaime Ferrer, all young guys last year, all freshmen, sophomores last year, and they've taken that step that Link Jarrett was expecting. So I think that's huge going into the ACC play. They are both James Tibbs and Cam Smith lead a lot of statistical categories in the ACC. And that's what you really, really like to see, because this is a league that knows how to pitch, and they're hitting the ball very, very well. They are one of the hottest teams, I think, right now in the conference, and it's thanks to those three.
Yeah, I'm especially happy with James Tibbs being on my new fantasy team. So
yeah, I would be too.
So, yep, moving along. Florida State, I mean, they should be ranked. They're not. They have a chance to be. They will host Notre Dame this weekend. I believe they host Notre Dame. We'll see in the end if they're going to Notre Dame or hosting. Next up, the last of the non-conference games, it was Clemson, UNC Greensboro. Clemson, pretty routine. They took care of business. Didn't get the start they wanted out of Austin Gordon on Friday, but Tristan Smith and Aiden Knack continue to take care of business. Cam Canarella continues to be Cam Canarella, and they're just getting decent performances heading into ACC play.
Gotta love it. Glad that Cam is healthy and doing well. One of my favorite players in this conference. I think that's the only problem I had with my team, is that I didn't have Cam Canarella, because I love that guy. He's awesome. Alden Matthias, I think, is one of the more underrated players on this Clemson squad, and in terms of the ACC as well. He's been hitting the ball very, very well lately. There's not a whole lot you can take out of UNCG. They're a good team, UNCG. I mean, right now they're beating NC State 9-3. They beat Wake Forest 2 weeks ago in a midweek. They're not a team that you should take lightly. As we know, teams from both the states of North Carolina and South Carolina always give you a challenge, always make a regional run or try to make the regionals. So UNCG, honestly, is a team to watch out for when it comes to Selection Sunday, and to see if they can win. What's their conference? They're in the SoCon, I believe.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. They just don't. That's right. They just don't have the football team. That's right.
Right. Yeah. Micah, I think, is mentioned there in the SoCon.
Yes. So they're a good SoCon team. And I think Clemson did a great job handling business, considering they already are about to get, if this lead holds for them, 2 ACC wins of not just schmucks in the ACC, but 2, top tier ACC teams. So not a whole lot though, but they're going to find out quickly with this Clemson Duke series coming up. So I can't wait for that.
Oh yeah, it's another top 10 matchup for Duke. This time their conference home opener with Clemson, so it'll be a lot of fun. But now we get into the real meat of the episode here with conference play. On your screen here. That was probably poor phrasing. Pittsburgh and North Carolina. The Gritsburg dream is dead. Despite that, they played really well. I think I talked about it. I don't know if I talked about it on the podcast, but I definitely wrote it in the preview article that I thought Pittsburgh would bring the offense, but I didn't know if they'd bring the pitching. It turns out they brought the pitching, didn't bring the offense. Casey Cook, 3 for 12 in the series, but they were monster hits, the 3 hits he had. Colby Wilkerson at the bottom of the lineup almost went 500 in the series. Vance Honeycutt hit his first double, but really it was just the pitching. These were really 3 big pitching matchups between Pitt and North Carolina. What are your thoughts here on Pitt first, Nick? Do you walk away a little bit more impressed with Pitt or not? Because it's interesting because they got swept.
Yeah, you say the Gritsburg dream is dead. I don't think so. I think they went down to a very tough team, and a ball bounces their way. They could win this series 2 out of 3. That game 1 and game 3 are both very close. I think Pitt is a dark horse team to not typically make the regionals, but I think they can upset a lot of teams like Virginia Tech. I think they could stop them. I think they can get their best out of Miami and Virginia. I like this Pittsburgh team. They've even getting swept, they still have surprised me. Like, I really don't care that they got swept, in, to be quite frank, because how close this series was on the road. I think if you're Pitt, you know what you're good at, you know what you're not so good at. Let's take care of business when we have teams at home. Let's take care of business of teams that we think we can be better than. I like what I kind of saw from Pitt, even though they got swept. I think they won their midweek already, so I think they're starting to go back to a little bit of momentum. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that game one was 1-1, I think, going into the bottom of the eighth.
Yeah.
And then game three went to the bottom of the ninth or the 10th. I can't remember if it did go into extras. So yeah, just an awesome series of pitching. And you're right. Maybe the Pittsburgh dream isn't dead, but I was really excited about this series. I picked them to win it, and they couldn't win a game, so I was a little disappointed. But North Carolina, I think, is interesting because obviously, number one, you just take care of business. You're 3-0. Your pitching shows up, but is there any concern about the offense?
You know, there could be a little bit of concern, but I think Jack Sokol is really good. I think he's one of the more underrated pitchers in the ACC right now. I mean, he's one of their rare returners from last year's team. I would be just a wee bit concerned if I'm the UNC Bats. I mean, while we are kind of still high on Pittsburgh, they're not one of the top tier teams. They kind of are approaching the middle tier. But I would be a little concerned of their bats. Needless to say, I think they should be okay. Why? Do you think you're a little concerned about their bats?
I don't know. There's so much. I thought they would light up some of. Ryan Reed didn't look particularly good in Las Vegas. Neither did Ryan Andrade, and they both pitched 5 innings of 1 run for Andrade and 2 for Ryan Reed. So I thought they would really get to those guys, and Sokol was really good on Saturday. So it's really interesting situation, but I think they'll be okay. It's just I think Pittsburgh pitching really showed up. I initially when I was looking at scores, I had a little concerns, but then I thought about it. You got to really like the Shea Sprague coming into the weekend rotation on Sunday and giving you that veteran presence behind the 2 freshmen in Boaz and DeCaro. What's going to be interesting, and I was listening to this to the D1 baseball podcast with the ACC podcast. They had Fitt on, Aaron Fitt, who I spoke with a couple times at the Wake Forest game, but he brought up a good point with the freshmen is how are these freshmen going to end up at the, once you get to postseason time, because it's a lot of workload on them they haven't experienced before. So it'll be interesting to see what UNC might have to do towards the end of the year with, putting so many innings on Boaz and DeCaro. And that might be why you see somebody like Boaz only throwing 72 pitches in game 1, especially after he threw like 106 last week. So great series win for UNC. Pittsburgh, while they didn't win, we still kind of come away impressed. Moving along to your NC State Wolfpack here. NC State took care of business as well, and yet at the same time, there's some valid question marks about this NC State team. But with BC, I mean, to me, I think they've got talent, but I think I've said it before. I think they're still trying to establish an identity under Todd Interdonato. And so, yeah, they play really close in game 1 on Friday in the first game. Remember, this was a doubleheader because of weather on Saturday. So they play really close. They have Tyler Mudd in the game, and NC State's able to walk it off at the end of the game. And then in game 2, Friday, the second game of the doubleheader, NC State absolutely, that game was actually close until about the 5th or 6th inning. It was 1-1, and then NC State broke it open and scored, I think, 7 runs in the frame. And then game 3 was just, I was listening to it on the radio driving back from Winston-Salem, and it was absolutely wild. That's the epitome of a Sunday shootout. We'll start with NC State with you, Nick. Do you have any concerns about NC State after the series? I mean, it's kind of crazy that they swept, and yet I don't necessarily feel great about this NC State team.
It's weird. I feel this time last year, if I had to compare the two teams, I feel a little bit better about this year's team because I think the bats have improved. And I think the starting rotation has improved. I think this is the first time where I came out of 2 weeks in a row where I was happy with the performances of the starting rotation. But then again, there's got to be something they got to figure out something with that bullpen. I mean, what I watched on Sunday was kind of atrocious. That was very, very bad. They had a 7-1 lead and blew that. They had 11-6 lead and blew that, and then it was 18-12. And in the top of the ninth, we walked the bases loaded, and BC hits a grand slam with one out, and it's just, man, we're about to blow this game. I don't know who you can rely on in this NC State bullpen right now. I think Duden is really the only guy. And I think most of Wolfpack Nation agrees that he's the most reliable guy out of the pen right now. You're not going to win a bunch of ACC series if your bullpen is continuing to blow leads like this. I gave him a bit of a break in game one because I know those runners were responsible for Logan. But they got out of the jam there, luckily, in the 10th inning. So that's fine. But I want to be very happy with because right now, you'll take an ACC sweep no matter what, but there's a glaring problem, and it's been lingering on all year. Like, it started from last year, it's still lingering on this year. It's the one problem that still hasn't been fixed. We did fix the backs. It seems like the rotation is really good this year, but I don't know. I'm very, very iffy on this bullpen. And right now they're losing 9-3 to a UNCG team. They're not producing so well on the bullpen side.
Yeah, one of the reasons I ranked this NC State team in the preseason was because of the strength of the pitching staff. I thought it was going to be the deepest pitching staff they'd had in years, and I think they've got the talent. I just don't know what's happening when they get into the game to execute some of this. And I know the starting pitching, Logan Whitaker and Sam Highfill have been pretty good. Dominique Fritton hasn't quite been what I expect from him. I thought he was going to take a step forward and be a potential ACC Pitcher of the Year candidate. He's still trying to get that under control, but he's not necessarily getting tagged. So you're getting decent results for your starting pitching, but then again, just like last year with was it Justin Lawson out of the bullpen was your main guy? And Rio Britton. Those were basically the two main guys. And now It's a similar situation to this year where you've got really two guys that you can rely on. And then it's just kind of hoping somebody else can figure it out. So that's a little disappointing. But on the other side, I thought the offense wouldn't hit as much as they have. I thought they'd hit a little bit, but Alec Makarovich was the reigning ACC Player of the Week. He only went 5 for 15 with 4 extra base hits and 8 RBIs. Pennington has only 1 home run on the year, but he's got 9 doubles and he's driven in. He went over 500 on the weekend. Cozart is heating up, so you love that. And then Josh Hogue quietly 6 for 13, and Serrano had the multi-home run game on Sunday as well. So offensively, love that. I do think it's a better lineup than last year, and they hit better. So that's obviously a plus, like you said. But yeah, they got to figure out the bullpen. And on the flip side, Boston College is going to be towards the bottom of the conference. I think. I don't think they have the pitching. Once they burned Tyler Mudd on Friday and didn't get the win, I figured they were toast for the rest of the series because Tyler Mudd is their only reliable reliever.
Yeah, it does seem like, Boston College is taking a step back, I think, this year. Their pitching's okay. Their bats are pretty good, but, if you're losing to if you're getting swept by NC State, someone who I think we can confidently say isn't the best team in this conference, It's not a good sight right now. So they've got some things to figure out right now. I mean, how do you feel confident that they'll at least make Charlotte?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. And last weekend, remember they came to Virginia last weekend. I saw them in person. They played Richmond, William Mary, and Virginia Commonwealth. They went 2-1. They got dog walked by VCU on Sunday, but they didn't have a home run in any of those 3 games. And then, which is fine, but then you expect the running game to be picked up. They didn't really have any stolen bases either. So
Right.
I'm not sure what their offensive identity is right now, and I think that's part of the issue there. So we'll see. Right now I'm not too impressed. I hope they can figure it out and improve. But either way, they're not necessarily an easy win. I don't think there are any easy wins in the ACC, so it'll be interesting moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to the Virginia Tech Hokies and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Another sweep. Virginia Tech's actually atop the Coastal. We'll show you the standings later. But the Hokies, they beat Notre Dame 11-3, beat them 10-5 in Game 2. And in Game 3, they were getting ready to run rule Notre Dame, and Notre Dame made some noise in the late innings to get it kind of close, make it a save situation for Jordan Little, former ECU pitcher out of the bullpen. But Virginia Tech sweeps Notre Dame. They are 3-0 in the ACC. And somehow on the screen, I took a loss away. A loss away somehow there. They should not be 12-2. They've lost 3 games. They are actually on the season. They are 11-3. So a little bit of a mistake there on my on the records after the game. But Virginia Tech continue to hit. Garrett Michelle, he's out for the season with a broken wrist. So they've got to find they've needed to find some offense to replace him. So they rely on a freshman catcher to play DH. He's not necessarily ready to catch collegiately, but as the DH, he only went 4 for 14 with 3 extra base hits and 3 RBIs. So Virginia Tech continuing to slug. I believe you posted the stats. They actually passed Duke and they lead the ACC in slugging. So
Yes.
Obviously, we're going to talk about Virginia Tech first. Nick, what are your thoughts here?
Not only are they slugging, but I think they found a pretty good rotation too, which we really didn't expect going into this season. I mean, Brett Renfroe is leading the ACC in innings pitched right now. 10 strikeouts on the game during Friday. So the pitching has been a very, very good surprise. And I think a lot of Virginia Tech fans that I've encountered on Twitter throughout the last night and this morning are very pleased and very genuinely shocked that they have a good pitching staff right now. We know Carson DiMartini was going to be a great asset to this team coming back from last year. So there's no surprise there that he's doing really well. Man, Virginia Tech is a sleeper in this conference. I think the national media, baseball media, needs to talk about this team more. I don't quite have them ranked yet in my top 25. I don't know if any one of us did in the
I was
College
close,
Baseball Central team.
but yeah. The problem is there's so many teams right around that 25 spot that it was hard to adjust, and teams didn't really lose to drop out, so it was hard to justify putting them in over somebody who didn't lose.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely had them as like one of the 8 or 9 teams I considered to be ranked in my top 25, but Virginia Tech, a pleasant surprise, and I can't wait to see what else this team can do as they play tougher teams down the stretch.
You know who's not surprised?
You.
Yeah, so if y'all remember, we did like a preseason like questionnaire. My bold take was that Virginia Tech will make the NCAA tournament. And Micah was mad at me, not because of the take, but because I'm supposed to be a UVA fan, which I try to be an unbiased reporter. But he gave me crap for that, but it's looking pretty good. And there was a tweet from Virginia Tech the other day that had a side-by-side of Renfroe and Drew Hackenberg, Hackenberg from his freshman debut, ACC debut, and Renfro's from the other day, and it was so that was pretty funny. I had to retweet that because that's kind of what it's very similar to 2022 in the way that you knew their lineup would hit, but you had no idea what kind of pitching was coming. And Wyatt Parliament coming over from Rutgers, he's been great. He had 10 strikeouts, so you've got two guys, 13.1 innings. They gave up 4 combined earned runs, and they had 20 strikeouts. You love to see that, and only 2 combined walks. And then Griffin Steig on Sunday, 5 innings, 2 earned runs, just going about his business. So the offense you knew would hit. And the reason I made that bold take is I said if they just get a little bit of pitching, they could make the NCAA tournament. And the way they're pitching right now, I mean, they could be exceeding that expectation. But we'll see. I mean, this Notre Dame lineup is no joke. They hit 15 home runs last weekend before they came into this one. They can slug. They hit some home runs this weekend, but Virginia Tech pitching shut it down. So that's the big story for me. Just a very, very good Virginia Tech baseball team so far. They get to go to Louisville this weekend, so we're going to get some more questions answered both about Tech and Louisville. So you got any thoughts on Notre Dame? I mean, they're still trying to figure out pitching. I mean, they're not getting any of it. Doesn't matter who they're putting in the rotation.
Right now, at the moment, they are still out for me on Charlotte. I think they are one of the bottom 2 teams. They really couldn't put anything together this week. They didn't really have an answer till like late in game 3. I do worry about this Notre Dame team making Charlotte.
Yeah, it's a shame because I was really intrigued by this series because of Notre Dame's lineup. So one of the questions I had was how this Virginia Tech pitching staff would handle a really good Notre Dame lineup, and I come away. I mean, you can hear both of our voices how impressed we were with Virginia Tech's pitching against Notre Dame's lineup, and then Notre Dame's pitching. They brought in. They decided to go with Ricky Reith on Friday, Toby McDonough, 2 guys to replace Spivey and Denny's in the rotation, and they got similar results. So Notre Dame trying to figure out pitching wise, but Virginia Tech looking dangerous, quietly dangerous. And you're right. I think the national media is going to pick up on it pretty soon, especially if they win the series at Louisville and start ACC play 5-1 or 6-0.
Yeah.
All right. Crazy series. Wild series. Virginia, unbelievably uncharacteristic play from them. They blew leads in all 3 games on Sunday, which, by the way, I have that score wrong. That score should be flipped on Sunday. Virginia won 14-11. Virginia actually gave up the lead twice, 3 times, 2 or 3 times before they finally won anyway. So very bad. I mean, Friday night they gave up 5 unearned runs. In that comeback, they were up 4-0. And then in game 2, they were up 12-3 at the 7th inning stretch. Nick, 12-3. You were enjoying Chase Burns at the time. Mm-hmm. And I was following this on Game Stats while enjoying Chase Burns and watching this lead disappear. Miami's biggest comeback since 1992. So pretty long time ago. And then game 3, again, Virginia got out to early leads, got multiple 3 or 4 run leads and blew them time and time again before they finally got the win at the end of the game. So I'll start with you because I don't know where to start with this Virginia team, but do you think, all right, here's the question. Miami wins 2 of 3, and we all were pretty low on Miami, and they needed a comeback in the middle of the week to beat Stonehill, who's only been a D1 program for this is their 2nd year. Does this series say more about Virginia, or does it say more about Miami?
I think it says more about Virginia because, like you said, it's uncharacteristic of Virginia to give up these many runs throughout the starting rotation and the bullpen. I myself was a little higher on Miami than most this year. I think when we did our preseason polls, I had them right at 25. But Miami needed this series win because they were struggling a lot out of the gate. But I do think that this does say more on the Virginia side than it does Miami, because we knew Miami could hit. We knew Miami had returners and pretty good infield and all of that. So nothing about that has changed for me. But the Virginia pitching has changed for me a little bit.
Yeah, I'd agree with you because I don't think it's unfair to say that Virginia should have swept this series,
Right.
even in hindsight. So the fact they lost the series, not just lost one game, they lost 2 games, almost got swept themselves by losing the third. I think that does say a lot about them, and maybe they've got a major concern. We talked about NC State. Their bullpen, they didn't have it wasn't quite to this extent. I mean, they still managed to sweep, right? And I mean, they weren't playing Miami in Miami. That's a benefit. But I mean, Cullen McKay goes 5.1 innings, no earned runs, has one of the best starts of a UVA starter this year. He's got like a 0.54 ERA on the season. Evan Blanco does solid. Jay Woolfolk was doing pretty well until he got to the to the last inning there, but the bullpen then just came in and could not get outs. And Blake Sear, it's really nice to see him swinging the bat again back out there. He went 6 for 13. He had that grand slam that gave Miami the lead. And then Daniel Cuvée hit a home run right after that. So Cuvée hit a home run both the first 2 games, and just a really good performance from those 2 guys. And then what was interesting, Miami actually brought in Nick Robert at the end of every game in the series. He's a freshman, and he's really good. But I was just surprised they brought him out there in Game 3 after pitching in each game in each of Game 1 and 2. But if you're a Virginia fan, you got to be excited to see who our number 1 top performer, or the number 1 guy on the list, is Ethan Anderson, who has been struggling as of late. He goes 6 for 15. He's getting going, and he had 2 doubles despite being dropped a bit in the lineup.
Yeah, I think that's huge. One person I do want to point out is Gage Zeal. I think he struggled a lot to start the season, and he's kind of built it back up together, throwing 97 pitches. I think that might be the most he's thrown so far this season. Almost going 6 innings. I think that's huge for Miami to have your number 1 guy kind of getting his feet under him again. And I think you made a good point, Monty. I kept doubting myself about the NC State bullpen, and then you look around the conference, and Virginia had a bad bullpen weekend, and Miami did.
Yeah,
and
basically just Duke.
Wait. Yeah. So it's at BC. I mean, State played BC. So it's kind of interesting how like what we're taking out of this ACC weekend is that the bullpens have been very shaky for a lot of teams.
Yeah, to be honest, I think only if you're Duke do you kind of feel confident in that bullpen.
Yeah.
I know they had a little, like a very minor shakiness on Sunday, but every other team in the ACC, there's concerns with their bullpens. Maybe not just this weekend, but overall, as they're still trying to figure out who's going to pitch where and who's really getting in a groove. So wild series. Shout out to Harrison Didewick, who had hit a home run, I think 4 straight games from into Saturday, and had 2 home runs Saturday. So monster season for him. He's put on some weight. Good to see him slugging. Casey Sauke had a multi-home run game. So we love to see it. Moving along to our big headliner, the game that you and I were both at. Game 1 was incredibly hyped up. It was Santucci versus Hartle. There were comparisons made to the Rhett Lauder, Paul Skeens matchup from Omaha last year. There was 50 plus MLB scouts in attendance. The atmosphere was electric for considering the weather and the time of year. Let's start. I want to talk about that atmosphere. I was in the press box, and it was pretty impressive, but you were amongst the people. What was that atmosphere like?
Man, it's been like that all year for the Deeks. I mean, since they really got a groove going in the middle of last year, they got to number 1. that's what you kind of expect now at the couch. That was a great, great atmosphere. And, shout out to the Duke fans on Friday night, because I went to all 3 games and they had a pretty decent crowd behind the Duke dugout. And even on Saturday, I mean, if you didn't know, Duke played UNC. I'm sure every Duke fan wanted to be at home, but they had a pretty good sized crowd at the baseball game on Saturday too, as the UNC Duke game was going on as well. So the couch is always bumping now. Like this Wake Forest fan base is expecting something, and they're coming out to see it. So it was a very, very great atmosphere.
So game 1 did not go according to script.
Right.
Both Hartle and Santucci got tagged a bit. I think it's interesting. We interviewed Bielenson after the game, and by the way, that kid is a character. I walked away just very excited about. He didn't just give you the cliche lines. He was honest and had a little bit of a sense of humor, so that was fun. But he mentioned there was a hype video at the beginning that kind of got them amped up. So they come in and there's a big crowd, so they're amped up already for that. And then the Wake Forest does this really fun hype video for a series that they're talking about should be something that's taking place at the end of the year, and that got them even more locked in. And AJ Gracia in the post-game interview said, that he thinks that both teams were a little bit more locked in for this game than they normally would have, and that might have played a factor in the 2 pitchers getting beat up a little bit. But it still ended up being an incredible college baseball game, just not what we expected. What were your thoughts on Santucci and Hartle?
Like you said, Santucci, right, going into this series was probably the front runner to win the ACC Pitcher of the Year. And then you got Josh Hartle, who was voted preseason ACC Pitcher of the Year. So kind of not what we expected. I didn't expect a slugfest back and forth. It was like a boxing match, back and forth, blow for blow, until, Duke kind of ran away with it in the later innings in the 6th, 7th, and 8th. Monty, there were, I don't know if you know this, but the third base coach for Duke was on the Wake Forest staff 2 years ago. So he knew some, he got the tipping pitches. Like, he knew what was going on. He was reading the tipping pitches. That's what I was told. Same thing happened to one of their Wake's relievers, Will Ray. Because right when Corey Muscara went to go talk to him, before he even reached the foul line, he said, "Yep, he's got you. He's got you. You got to fix this right now." So I thought that was very interesting. I don't know if you noticed. I think it was game 2. All of a sudden, the Wake guys in their dugout were going really, really loud because they all knew that the third base coach had something on them. So I thought that was very entertaining. It was a game of chess going on.
I love it. Yeah. So. It reminds me, there was, as a Nationals fan, Strasburg in game 6 against the Astros, he got lit up in the first inning because it seemed like, I know that with the Astros scandal, who knows, but he was supposedly tipping his pitches, and they had to make an adjustment, and then he had an MVP performance the rest of the way. So I love that kind of chess match. That's really interesting. Yeah, that brings up a whole thing. But yeah, like you said, it was a shootout. After 4 innings, it was 6-5. Charlie Bielenson goes 3 innings. They bring him in the 7th, and he actually loads the bases with no outs and then gets out of it. And those were his first 2 walks of the year, by the way. Again, in the post-game interview, we asked him about it, and he's like, after that first walk, I was like, I got to do better. He was mad that he got a first walk. He's like, I think I did a little bit better. And then he goes, I mean, I did walk another one, but yeah. So, but Charlie Bielenson right now, just electric on the mound for them. And if you guys didn't know, he holds the Duke record for appearances in a season with 39 last year, which is absolutely insane because I think they played 63 games, and he appeared in 2/3 of them basically. So bullpen really came up big for Duke. Who were you most impressed with? Well, we'll get to that later. Let's talk about the next game, because the next game, there's only one name we need to talk about in game 2, right?
Right. Yeah. Chase Burns.
Oh, absolutely. Oh man, 6 innings, 1 earned run, and that also in a lot of ballparks would have been a fly out. 2 hits, 14 strikeouts, 2 walks, 99. He induced 24 swings and misses. One of the best pitching performances I've seen this year, outside of, I think, probably the best other than Hagen Smith's big time performance a couple weeks ago in Texas.
I mean, what can you say? I mean, this was Chase's best performance. It seems like every start that he's had for the Deeks has been better and better and better. Duke didn't have an answer for him at all. I mean, he was hyped up. He was consistently throwing 98 on his fastball. He touched 100 a couple of times throughout the night. I mean, Chase was their MVP, I think, throughout the series, because without him, I think Wake could have gotten swept if they don't have him. Unbelievable performance by Chase Burns.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the scoreboard was about a tick lower, 1 tick lower on the velocity than it actually was. So he was actually hitting 100 more than you thought. His 98th pitch was it was a ball at the knees. Sorry, my dog just scared me. It was a ball at the knees that it was still like 101, 102. So, after, 98 pitches, he was still throwing gas. And I loved the reaction too when he came out of the game. Just the whole celebration, knowing how big a series it is. Like, we've got MLB fans who have no idea what they're missing, as you and I got to sit there in an electric top 10 meaningful baseball series over the weekend and see that kind of passion and celebration while those fools are still watching meaningless spring training games.
Yeah. Unbelievable. I mean, trying to grow the game here, and the top of our sport is missing out on like an electric series. Like, that felt like an Omaha series, that felt like a super regional. It was unbelievable. So wow, Chase Burns just blew me away. That was awesome.
And no big surprise, it was like an Omaha or a super regional. They both had letdowns tonight in the midweek. Don't be too alarmed at that. This was a very intense series, and 2 days later they're back out there for a midweek. It's tough. It happens. Wake Forest is on the road too, so don't take too much into that. Also, Coastal is just a really, really good baseball team. But
I should update you. I should update you, Monty. I don't know if you're keeping track. It's now 13-9.
Oh, so Wake, and they're still trailing by 4, right?
They're still trailing by 4. It's the bottom of the 7th. Nick got a 3-run homer. Jake Reinisch has hit a homer. There's still a lot of game to be played left down in Conway. So they're only down 4 with 3 innings to go.
They may not have a letdown, but Duke did. Game 3 was really sloppy. It was windy. I think I saw a stat that I think like almost every pitcher had at least 1 walk. And then the strike zone was absolutely awful. Chris Pollard got ejected. I don't have too much to add on this game, other than, just Duke should have pulled away, and props to Wake Forest for fighting back. But it was a pretty sloppy game.
I do have a couple of things to add on the Wake Forest side of things in game 3. They need to find somebody out of that bullpen. Will Ray cannot be the only guy out of that pen that you can rely on. And he's been fantastic. Like, he pitched in the midweek. He pitched he didn't pitch Saturday, but he pitched Friday and he pitched Sunday. And he gave them a chance on Sunday, going, I think, 1 1/3, only giving up 1 hit with 3 strikeouts or 4 strikeouts. Like, he was on fire. I love that I know these guys. I know some of the staff and stuff, but I question some of the cuts that Wake made to their pitching staff going into the season. I think it's very, very heavy freshman based right now. And I think a lot of guys are not finding the zone. I mean, just tonight, Monty, I don't know if you know this, right now, they've hit 6 batters tonight.
Oof.
6. On Sunday, they could not find the zone. A lot of pass balls, there were a lot of errors for Wake Forest too. I think Austin Hawk had 2 or 3 of him to himself. There's a kid, I'm going to vouch for him. There's a kid on this Wake Forest, not on this roster anymore, but I feel like they're missing some experience. And unfortunately, that senior got cut. And I think right now they could use him. I think Walt made a mistake of knowing that Cole Rowland's out, knowing that Crawford Wade's out, knowing that his own son, Chase Walters, is out. They're all juniors and seniors and grad students. You can't rely on freshmen and sophomores, especially in this conference. And they might be good. They might be very good. We know that there's the pitching lab and Wake is recruiting at a very high level, but you need someone with a little experience. I do feel for that senior that was cut because I thought he was going to be a guy out of the pen that is going to, give you something. And I think they're really missing some experience out of the bullpen right now, other than Will Ray.
Yeah. And, I think they also have a roster spot filled by Luke Schmolk, who is not eligible to play in any games because of his late transfer from Georgia Tech. Our Miami guy just joined us. He is asking where the chokers are. Just to let you know, we have already reviewed UVA and Miami. So you're going to have to go back and watch that before
listen
this.
To the pod.
Yeah, listen to the podcast when it comes out from ACCFQ. This just means less. Anyway, so overall, who are you most impressed with from Duke? Who are you most impressed with from Wake Forest? You can't say Chase Burns for Wake Forest because that's the obvious choice.
I will say I'll start with Duke. I'm going to go with Charlie Bielenson. Coming in on Friday night, saving the day, even with the pressure on him, which was caused by him. Bases loaded, nobody out, and he got out of the jam. He had, 58 pitches as a closer, pitched 3 innings. Unbelievable. And then on Sunday, saving the day again. So Charlie Bielenson for me is my MVP for Duke. And then for Wake, like I mentioned before, I'm going to go with Will Ray. He's been the most consistent, solid piece of that Wake Forest bullpen. Gave them a chance on Sunday to come back and limit the damage that Duke put on them. And he was lights out on Friday night too. So I know there are a lot of bats out there. Like Jake Reinisch had a great series. Jack Winay had a great series. Seaver had a great series. And on the Duke side, there's AJ Gracia. Wallace Clark had a monster game. But I'm going to go with 2 pitchers out of the pen.
I love it. I was going to go with Bielenson myself, just because since I've interviewed the kid, I love him. He's great. But instead I'll go with AJ Gracia. This is a freshman who he does not chase, and he's got a really good knowledge of the strike zone to a point where I think sometimes the umps just take his word for it. And he told me after the game on Friday that he couldn't really see what was coming out of Hartle's hand. He just knew if it was coming at him, it was probably going to be in the zone and he should swing. So luckily for him, nothing was actually coming at him that was a fastball. So that was good. Otherwise he would have been hit. He had a monster home run, hit another one off of relief there. So just a really great performance from a freshman facing 3 MLB first round picks. He goes 5 for 11 with a double, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs. He's been extremely impressive. He doesn't play baseball like a 18, 19-year-old kid. He looks, like a grizzled vet. On the Wake Forest side, again, we could go with Jake Reinisch or Jack Winay. or Adam Tellier, although Tellier didn't really do too much until the Sunday game, but Seaver King. And I've talked about it on the weekend rotation, and everyone showed video of his home run on Friday off Santucci in his second at bat, I believe, where he had that moon shot. And that was impressive, but what was more impressive to me was his first inning double. And the reason is that Santucci's throwing a 95-mile-an-hour fastball up in, like, not even up in the zone. It was near his shoulders, and he tomahawks it 106 miles an hour into the gap for a double. For those who don't play baseball, that's not something that is easy to do. The bat speed you need to be able to do that, and then not just to get around on it, but to get around on it enough to hit it 106 mile an hour the other way, like into the outfield, is just mind-boggling. And that was the moment for me. And then the other thing is he just came in and played shortstop after playing center field all year like it was no big deal. So Seaver King, really, really impressive. That double was the most impressive thing for me. I'm surprised nobody got that video on Twitter, as opposed, when I tried to look for it, all they had was the home run, and I thought that double was even more impressive.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I think that's a great pick, mainly because of him moving to short with the hamstring injury to Merrick Houston, who should be back, I hope, pretty much by the Virginia series. It's not too bad, but very I mean, he had like a top 10, like ESPN top 10 play over at short, I think, on game one. Had to go to his right and fade away and throw the guy out at first. Seaver, I like that pick. Had a great
Yeah.
series. I think that's huge, hitting behind Nick Kurtz too.
Yep, and he is a natural shortstop, but he hasn't been playing there much because he's been having to play center field. So to go in there kind of cold, because you're not even expecting to play shortstop, but because Merrick Houston got hurt running the bases in the very first inning, he steps in and does a great job. So and I'm glad Merrick Houston will be back. He's a very important piece of that team, and also I put him on Noah's fantasy team, and it would feel messed up if he was immediately hurt and missed some time. Not that our fantasy thing is the end all be all, but that's the Wake Forest Duke series. If you want a more in-depth recap, you can check out Nick's article on our website, collegebaseballcentral.net. Moving along, we're wrapping up here. Let's talk about the division standings. Your NC State Wolfpack are atop the Atlantic Division, despite those concerns we talked about. Stop the count. Yep, claim that ACC championship before anything else happens. And then North Carolina on the other side, North Carolina and Virginia Tech leading the Coastal. But we're going to talk about the ACC, previewing it. Boston College at Pittsburgh. In previous years, I think this is one that nobody's tuning into. I might be tuning into this one. It depends on how much time I have, since I'll be at Wake Forest and Virginia. But I think Pitt's going to get back on track here and take care of business. They're going to take 2 out of 3 at least. What do you think?
I agree with you. I don't think Pitt is going anywhere. I think they're a good ball club. This is kind of huge if we thought that Pitt might be like the bottom tier, missing out on Charlotte. This series, technically right now, would be a tiebreaker if all is going according to plan in our heads right now. So I like Pitt 2 out of 3 in this one. I think they've got great pitching, and I think they've got decent bats that will outlast Boston College.
Yeah, I'm with you. Another big series for Wake Forest, and they're going on the road for the first time in conference play to Virginia. I'll let you start. What are you looking for in this series, and who do you think's coming out on top?
This is tough. I think
it is tough because it's hard to imagine. It is hard to imagine Virginia being as bad as they were last weekend twice in a row.
It's hard to imagine that for Wake too. Like one of these teams is about to lose 2 ACC series in a row, and that's just like really hard to fathom in my head.
And they were the 2 Omaha teams last year.
They were the 2 Omaha teams. And we didn't see this matchup last year, which was unfortunate, but we're seeing it this year. I'm going to ride with Wake on this one. I don't know why. The bats are starting to heat up a little bit. Nick hit a home run today. I think a road trip for these guys is going to be good. I mean, they're right now at Coastal. They'll be back in Winston tomorrow and then hit the road the next day to Virginia. I trust the pitching a little bit more right now on the Wake side, especially the rotation. I think Will Ray has been very reliable. I think it's more of just I'm not used to Virginia giving up so many runs, and that we still know that this Wake Forest team can hit. And if this Virginia bullpen is anything like we saw in Miami, that those bats are going to take advantage of it, and you don't want Nick Kurtz to wake up in this series. I think he will.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm going Wake Forest as well. It's just I don't see that pitching staff, the bullpen getting right all of a sudden. I don't think they're going to necessarily struggle as much as they did, but I think I'm going to take Wake Forest. But what I'm really looking forward to, regardless of the outcome, is how Virginia's lineup faces the rotation, because Virginia's got one of the best lineups in the country. 1 through 9, they are. Jake likes to call them a python because they just kind of suck the life out of you. And it's not a bad analogy because they see a lot of pitches. They know the strike zone. They really grind out at bats. So I'm excited to see that, even if, ultimately, again, I think Wake Forest is going to win this series, but I'm really excited about the sub storyline of Virginia's really, really patient and solid lineup against Wake Forest elite rotation.
Yeah.
So moving along, Duke, they head home as the number 4 team in the country, their highest ranking, or I guess they're counting the D1 ranking, which I think has them at number 6, which is the highest ranking they have ever been, I believe, at least in the modern era. They are hosting Clemson, who is starting ACC play. I'm torn on this one as well. It's such a hard call because Duke played so well in that Wake Forest series for the most part. And yet everyone seems to be picking Duke. So I'm actually going to go the other way and pick Clemson just because most people seem to be picking Duke. I'm going to go Clemson 2 out of 3 on the road.
I'm going to go with you, Monty. I think, I think they gave everything in that Wake series. Not to say that they won't against Clemson. I mean, with this conference, there's no break, right? It's just, you happen to be playing 2 teams that I think collectively all of us think can make Omaha back-to-back weeks. I think Clemson's a little bit fresher. I think they didn't give it their all against UNCG. I think that will benefit Clemson a little bit. Now, they do have to go on the road, but I do like Clemson in this series 2 out of 3. I trust their bats. Their pitching has been pretty good. But it's another, I feel the same as you do when it comes to the Wake Virginia, where I don't know if I can pick one right now. Because again, that Duke lineup doesn't give you a break. Like everyone is slugging the ball right now for Duke. So, but I like Clemson just because I feel like they're a little bit fresher and they're not coming off a dramatic series last weekend.
Yeah, and Duke didn't even have Kyle Johnson hit it all, and he's hitting 333 on the season for them. I think he's going to be hitting less because since they've moved him into the rotation, being a freshman, they want to make sure he stays fairly fresh. So it's hard to trot him out there as a two-way player every day as a freshman as they're getting used to that workload. But yeah, by the way, we reserve the right to change our picks before our official ACC pick'em. We have our picks due tomorrow. There will be a graphic with our official selections before game times on Friday. So like, for instance, I think last week on the pod, I think I picked Wake Forest. I officially went Duke by the time we did our pick 'em. So we have the right to change our minds until that point. Next up, NC State at Georgia Tech. We're going to find out about NC State a little bit more as they head to Atlanta to take on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, Drew Burris, and as you mentioned earlier in the show, Peyton Green, their former. Did he play shortstop? I think I remember him playing some second base too.
He started at short, struggled there,
And
played
moved
some
us.
second, did some DHing.
Yep. So yep. So yeah, I will defer to you to start us out on what you're looking forward to there and who your pick is.
Well, ACC fans, if you want to see an absolute slugfest, then this is your series. Both of these teams can hit the hell out of the ball. One's got the one team has, I think, the number 2 RBI guy in the nation. The other team has a player leading the ACC in home runs. So you're going to see in the slugfest. I'm going to take NC State 2 out of 3 because while I do think both teams struggle in the bullpen, both teams have incredible bats. I trust NC State's rotation more. They've looked the most consistent. I'm pleased what I saw the last 2 weeks with this rotation. It seems like, last year they really couldn't figure out the rotation. They were moving guys around, having Sam start, having Sam not start, putting Dom as the Friday starter, then the Sunday starter. It seems like they figured it out. It's looking very consistent. So I will go. See, your dog is loving that I picked the Wolfpack. Your dog loves it.
He's
I'm
here
going,
with yeah.
Yeah, I'm going NC State 2 out of 3 against Georgia Tech.
I'm going to go the other way, just because we've agreed so far. I'm going to go Georgia Tech in an upset, a very close upset. I think Aiden Finateri does well on Saturday. I think Logan McGuire does well on Sunday, and I think they do just enough to take care of NC State. This is kind of a toss-up for me. It's a tough road series, so we'll see. But moving along to another intriguing series, that one of 2 series that does not have a top 25 team in our rankings, and that is our Hokies going to Louisville, Micah's Louisville. And we're going to get some questions answered about Louisville very quickly. I am going to go ahead and jump in front of you. I have a feeling you're going to go the same way with me on this. I'm going Virginia Tech 2 out of 3 on the road, starting ACC play 5-1.
I won't go all the way with you, but I will take Virginia Tech at a sweep. I think this team is feeling themselves. Louisville hasn't. I hope I'm proved wrong because I want Louisville to be back in the national conversation. I really do. But I do love this Virginia Tech story right now. I think it's one of the most interesting non-talked about stories in college baseball is this Hokies baseball team. Their pitching's very consistent. Their bats look really good. I think they shock the world and get the sweep at Louisville.
Awesome. Let's move on to our next one. Notre Dame, Florida State. We got the 0-3 Irish going to the Noah had watched our show and to a certain point wanted to let us know, but I'm going with Florida State over Notre Dame. I think Florida State's going to sweep and stay undefeated. I say undefeated. I have not checked the score. Am I still good?
It's 12-5, I believe, right now.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'm still good on that. So, yeah, I think Florida State's going to sweep Notre I think they're going to stay undefeated against Notre Dame. Especially with Connor Whitaker moving into the rotation for the ACC. They've got a Sunday guy figured out.
I agree with you. I think Florida State deserves to be ranked in the D1 polls. We do have them ranked in College Baseball Central, but they look really good. I don't think Notre Dame has a staff right now that you can rely on in terms of their rotation. Their bats are good, but I don't know if they're good enough for Florida State, especially on the road. I'm taking Florida State in a sweep, and bold take, I guess, but they will be in the top 20 per Division I baseball. So we'll see if that happens.
Lastly, ACC play of the weekend. North Carolina heads to Miami I'm going to let you start.
Give me the Heels 2 out of 3. I think they go down on the road and get it done. I think this series is going to be kind of closer than people think. I think Miami, like we said during recapping the Miami-Virginia series, I think it said more about Virginia. Miami, we know, can hit. Gage Zeal is looking a little bit better. But Carolina has been very consistent. They're undefeated in conference right now. They had a tough series against Pitt. I think they take 2 out of 3. I think Vance is going to have a big weekend.
I'm going to stick with Miami at home. If it was on the road, I'd be taking UNC. I think Miami's going to take 2 out of 3. I don't necessarily believe in this Miami team, which is funny because you're the one that kind of does.
Yeah.
and I'm going to take Miami 2 out of 3 because that Mark Light magic that I witnessed over this past weekend against Virginia, which I know has more to do with Virginia than Miami, but something's just telling me that the home field advantage is going to come into play for Miami. So we'll have our official picks out, like I said, later in the week. So that's the ACC slate. Before we finish up our show, it's our new power rankings. I will have the article out hopefully later tonight on the website with the full list and how they went, what their record is, all that. So obviously our biggest change, our biggest mover was Miami went up from 13 to 9. They went +4. And our biggest loser was Pittsburgh, who went from 6 to 11 despite playing fairly decent against UNC. But again, they went 0-3. So, Nick, how are you feeling about the our combined power rankings?
I feel really good. I think this is really close to what I had. I don't see anything that sticks out. I think Miami deserved to move up 4. I'm not too discouraged about Pitt dropping 5. I think it's just, the fact that they got swept, they had to be dropped 5, I think they're better than what people or what that series might have said. But no, I like it. I think Duke deserves to be number 1. I think Clemson and Florida State are perfectly right where they should be. Wake still remains at 4. UNC and NC State have consistently throughout the first month of the season moving up in everybody's power rankings. So I like what I see.
Yeah, it's I think it's a pretty good one. I'm disappointed Louisville's still down there at 14. They were just barely, Boston College, Notre Dame, and Louisville are all within 3 points of each other. So, they were very close to, having Louisville finally climb out of the basement, but Micah and Cole kept them in last. And that's, Micah's the one that's always pushing for Louisville, but he seems to be the one that hates them the most with how he puts them in his power rankings. So, Virginia Tech, big mover up to number 7. They're slowly moving up. I think they started at like 12, and we thought that was too low even in the beginning, but they've slowly made their way up to 7th in the first 4 weeks. This is a really interesting situation, but I think we got it right for the most part. Again, I feel like Louisville doesn't necessarily deserve to be the 14th, but other than that, I like what we've got going here between these with these 14 teams, and obviously there could be a lot of movers and shakers next week.
Yep, I agree. I think we're going to see a whole different power rankings now that every team is playing conference play. So it's going to be very interesting.
Absolutely. So that's pretty much our show. This is going to be coming out on the on Spotify and Apple and all the podcast platforms later in the week for the ACC FQ. The ACC means less, just means less podcast around the diamond.
Wait, say that again. You kind of cut out
for
there.
A second. All right. Do you have any final thoughts?
A couple. Don't get too discouraged about a midweek game. A lot of ACC teams are dropping games this week. Wake is down 17-9 against Coastal. State lost 18-3 to UNC Greensboro. UNC seems to be catching up to Rutgers and actually has taken the lead. If you're still live with us, go check out the Just Means Less podcast Twitter page. Micah is doing live updates and live videos right now at Boschmer Stadium. Shout out to Micah, by the way. I mean, going all the way to Duke and then this doesn't surprise me. Like Monty, I don't know if you know Micah super well. He would go in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming to go catch a D3 lacrosse game just because there's some kind of weird, interesting matchup. He will go anywhere.
That's gross.
You will find a reason to go to the most miserable place in America to watch the weirdest games. But shout out to him. Spontaneously after the Duke game, went to Boschmer in Chapel Hill, and he's catching a really good UNC Rutgers baseball game right now. So shout out to him. Keep up with the content. He's doing a really great job. It got a third hot dog review in. So that's great.
Yeah. Yep, and it's a specialty dog this time.
It's yeah. So I'm not surprised that took the cake so far in terms of all the ACC teams that he's seeing. Miami's down 6. What's that?
I was going to say I got the Deacon burger the other day.
Yeah.
At the Wake Forest game. So they give the media instead of providing food, they give the media vouchers so you can get whatever you want at the concession stand. So I was not mad about this burger. The Deacon burger is it's bacon, beef, American cheese in a glazed donut. And I would not pay $11.99 for this because it was a little small, but for me, it was free. It was delicious. I had it twice. I had it both Friday and Saturday night because I figured with all the walking I was doing, I had earned it. But my final thought is I'm going to give a shout out to Nick and his family restaurant, Dioli's in Winston-Salem. I had one of the best chicken Parmesan sandwiches of my life, and I was very pleased with that. A lot of places will do the deep fry, which I'm not a huge fan of. They'll smother it in sauce, which I'm not a huge fan of. But you guys pan-seared it in olive oil and really let the chicken shine as the star of chicken parm, which is a crazy concept, I know, but fantastic. And then I had trouble picking desserts, so I got an eclair, and you also recommended the tiramisu, which was just to die for. So if you're in the Winston-Salem area, make sure you hit up Dioli's Italian Market. And say hi to Nick, and it's legit. It lived up to the hype. So
I appreciate it, Monty. It was good to meet you too. And finally in person. I'm glad that you could stop by. It was awesome.
Oh yeah, yep. So great place to grab some authentic Italian sandwiches and stuff like that. So anyway, that's all I've got. We're gonna be back next week, hopefully back on schedule on Monday, breaking down all the action and seeing how our fantasy teams did for the first time. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.